Hi, and welcome to a video discussing what not being autistic actually feels like. So this might seem like a bit of an odd question or an odd sort of place to start. And originally I was going to be looking at sort of measuring myself against the DSM diagnostic criteria. But I also asked subscribers to the channel, people visiting the channel, to ask me some questions. So let's say I'm a neurotypical person, just putting some questions to me to get some insight about how folks like myself, non-autistic person, might sort of view the world or experience things or the world or whatever it might be. And actually we had so many amazing questions from people. I thought it was actually a lot easier just to answer the questions rather than muck about with the diagnostic criteria, just to sort of say, here's how I don't fit the criteria. Actually, when I read through the questions and thought about it, it's a better way of doing it is just to answer the questions, and then you'll be able to see, as best as I can describe it, what it's like to be me, a non-autistic and neurotypical person. Now, I'm not saying that I'm better or worse than anybody with or without autism. I'm just me. So take this as an entirely non-representative sample of one, and other people who don't have autism or would probably answer some of these questions in different variations and maybe completely differently in ways. But, I've only got me to go on, and I felt like the most honest response is to sort of take it from how I was and give yourselves an opportunity to be able to just sort of like listen in and see and just, make of it what you will. And the start point was a really wonderful question that I received, which effectively goes like this. I would love to know exactly how a neurotypical person perceives the world. I'm autistic, and I've always been told that I think too deeply and see details and links that aren't there. And I feel dismissed, confused, and astounded that neurotypical people seem oblivious to the world we're in. I know this is likely due to my heightened attention to detail, pattern recognition, and tendency to analyze, but I wonder what the typical neurotypical lens looks like. Is the world just really boring? How does a neurotypical brain create and play, make artwork, write poetry, appreciate music without this deep, natural, deep analytical lens? And I think that that's the ideal place to start. It's a wonderful question, so thank you very much. So I'm going to answer some of these questions, but there were so many, and the likelihood is it's going to take so long. I'm going to split this into a number of different videos that I'll put out over time so that it's not all a bit too much. So I'll kind of chunk this in a way. So that neurotypical lens, the way that we see the world, do we see the world? Is it a boring way because it's not seeing it through that autistic lens? It's seeing it through a completely different lens. What's it actually like? And I'm really happy to be able to say everything seems really fascinating and vivid and absolutely incredible. Everything's in technicolor. Everything's three-dimensional. Everything is full of the potential of what it might be and what it might not be. So when I look at things, when I see either a tree, I get memories of me being a child and climbing trees and looking at trees and being wondered by trees. And I get me as an adult now with a deep appreciation of what trees mean to the earth. And I see almost everything that can be seen about the tree. I think of it in terms of summer, winter, autumn, and spring, all at the same time. So whatever tree I'm looking at, I'm thinking about the potential, and think about whether birds might be living in it and whether squirrels might be running up and down it, and how deep the roots might be and how old it is and what kind of tree it might be. So I'm looking at it with that deep analytical lens and loving the full and deep appreciation of that, in the same way as I would look at music, for example, and I would see a musical instrument as an opportunity, as a potential. I might never have played it, I might never have even known what it sounds like, or I might be familiar with it. If I picked it up, I'm going to have a go at it. I have a sense of what the sound is, and I can link it to music that I've heard, either in symphonic form in terms of classical music, or in jazz, blues, pop, rock, whatever it might be. So it kind of, any one thing has a sort of like an infinite set of possibilities attached to it. And this comes back to the question within that about play, that when I was a child, my imagination would be riotous about these things. So I would walk through the woods with my brother and my dad, and I'd pick up a stick, and that stick would be everything. I would like a puppy dog picking a stick up. It could be a sword, it could be a gun, it could be a wand, it could be absolutely anything I wanted it to be. My imagination would create dimensions around this stick, and my brother and I would play for hours and hours and hours, running through the woods, having games, playing chase, inventing characters, inventing scenarios, and generally being completely lost in time. And my dad would come and find us and they'd be like, come on, we got to go, we got to get in the car. And we'd be all kind of like, we've been having a great time, we're grumpy, we don't want to leave, this is fantastic, we've had the best afternoon ever. Imagine 2 puppy dogs running through the woods. That's what me and my brother were like. We're just having this completely lost in the moment, the not being overwhelmed in any way, being completely comfortable and happy, and with the randomness of it. Whatever we might find became our potential game, our potential toy, our tool for our imaginations. It wouldn't matter whether it was raining, whether it was sunny, whether it was cold, whether it was dry. None of that really mattered. We just got lost in the play of the moment. And that features also within the creation of imagination, because that has been with me ever since I was a child. I could make stories up. I've wrote poetry. I've won a poetry competition, believe it or not. I used to be in a rock band. I was the only non-musician in the band that I was in at university, and I was the composer. I wrote songs, I wrote lyrics, I wrote the tunes, I sang and I played bass, and I just created it out of nowhere. It's like an empty parchment in my brain that just got filled with concepts and ideas, and it could be of anything. So I didn't have to be interested in anything. I didn't have to be wondering about anything. These things would just arrive in my head, and I would write them down, and they would be part of my imagination being used through words or through images or through music. It doesn't matter what it would be. It's just like a continuous potential flow. The key, though, is that it's not always there. I can open and close myself to it as much as I like. So being able to say compose, I can sit down and I can think about composing something. I can write a book, I can write a story, I can write a song, I can write a poem, or I can paint a picture. And if I choose not to do those things, my mind is absolutely absent of those things, and I can just be drifting on nothing. So an absence of thought can be there, or it can be filled with whatever I want to put there. Imagine it being like a tap that I have control over. I can choose to think about things. I can choose to create something. I can choose to see something, or I can choose not to, entirely as I feel like it. So it feels like this, my mind and my brain, the lens of which I view the world, is entirely within my control. I can turn it up, I can turn it down. I can open myself to noise, or I can open myself to silence, and be perfectly comfortable in both arenas by choice. And it feels like I have to appreciate this, because I'm aware that not everybody can have that. And that sense of being overwhelmed by sort of too much color or too much stuff rarely happens. It's very few circumstances where that sort of things would take place. So that the lens is like completely open all the time, and has this auto filter that allows me to just be comfortable in almost any scenario that I might be in. So I'm not sure whether you'd see that as being a deep analytical lens or not. Sometimes it feels like I can be really deep, and at other times I'm allowing myself to be the most shallow view that is possibly imaginable. I can look at something beautiful like a painting in an art gallery, and I can go, yeah, it's fine. Or I can really get into the depth of understanding a 1 minute song or 5 lines of prose. It doesn't really matter. I can either go deep, or I can be shallow entirely at will. So that's the start point. I think that kind of gives you a bit of an understanding as to where we are, and I'm realizing that I've only actually answered one question. So I'm going to answer one more question, and then I'm going to see how we get on with that one. And this question is read as such. Have you always felt like you are a person? Have you ever believed you are an alien, kind of dropped into the world for some reason not quite known? And again, a fascinating question. I've had lots of conversations with people, often traumatized people, thinking that they are some sort of other or some sort of different sort of being, or that they certainly don't belong in the world. And it's a fairly easy answer for me to be able to say absolutely not. I've never felt as if I'm an alien or some sort of like different type of being in the world. I have, and I can feel uncomfortable being in a place, and I can feel out of place. There are times when I've been in public transport, or I've been in certain settings or certain places or with certain groups of people or on my own, where I felt like I don't belong and I'm not comfortable. I might be anxious and I might be fearful, and I certainly would want to get out of there. And there are certain places where I might start feeling comfortable and then become very uncomfortable due to the sort of behavior or the volume of the people around me, and I can either stick it out or I can choose to leave. But I've always felt as if I am a solid person in the world. Think of it like a consistent timeline between my earliest memories and today. It's like an unbroken line where I am a complete person from there to now. And I've never not been me. I've not always been happy with maybe what I'm doing or what I'm engaging or participating or the direction that my life is going in. But I've always known it was me, and I've always known that there's a way out, or there's an alternative, and there's a way that I can move or change or redirect myself. So it's like not just feeling that I am a person, it's like having an absolute belief in myself as being that person, with agency and choice as much as the environment and the resources around me. So I've spent times in my life when I've had nothing. I've been extremely poor and we've had very little. My family was growing up. We never really had a great deal, but I've always felt like I could figure that out, or I can just make do. And I'm a person that is entirely comfortable with very little, but if you give me a whole ton of stuff, I can also be very comfortable with that. It's like I think in terms of the Weeble Wobble but don't fall down. It's like I can be moved and I can be pushed and I can be sort of like edged all over the place by the circumstances, but I always feel like I'm going to end up standing because there is this concrete solidity of me as a person in the world. I know I'm not going to live forever, so I don't have that kind of like, I'm not delusional in any way. But I have an absolute certainty of myself as a person. I know where I've been. I know what I've done. I have a consistent timeline of those things. And that informs me about what I'm able to do in the future, or my potential might be. So there we have it. I think I'm going to draw the line under the video at those two. I've got 20 questions, and in this video I've managed to do 2. So I feel like that's a little bit hopeless, but I did a bit of an introduction at the start as well. So when I do another video on these, I'm going to go through some more of the questions because they are so brilliant. And I'm loving doing this because not only do I get to sort of see what the questions are, so I have, I'm engaged in the understanding of what the autistic question might be to a non-autistic person, but it's also really helping me think about how I might do things, because I think what the problem is with a lot of neurotypical people as such, like myself, is we take it for granted how we are and why we do things. And that means we don't always explain it. And that can be very difficult for autistic people to get their heads around, because we can be quite peculiar people at the best of times, really opaque and not clear. And I think we just take it for granted that we have this kind of global appreciation or global abilities in many different fields. So we don't bother explaining anything. We don't bother making it clear. And we assume that because we can do these things, everyone else can't. And if they can't do those things, there's something wrong with them. And that's a real fallacy on our part. We shouldn't be thinking like this. So being able to answer these questions, I think, develops my understanding of myself and gives me a deeper and broader understanding of people who are not like me. Because before I trained as a psychologist, I was trained as an anthropologist, and I think I always have that kind of willingness and curiosity about others and what other people are doing and why, to see things through their lens. So I truly hope that this video has been the start point of me being able to try and explain my lens. Thank you very much for those 2 questions, and I'm going to be doing some more videos in this series as we go along, answering more of those questions. So thank you ever so much. Please leave comments on this. I'd love to know whether this is actually useful at all, because if not, I'll stop doing it. But if it is useful, I'll keep doing it. So thanks ever so much for the questions. Thanks ever so much for watching. Please continue to like, subscribe, and look at things on this channel, and join us on this funny journey that we're on about anything that jumps into our minds. So thank you ever so much. And between now and the next video, please do take great care.